The night glittered with a kind of perfection that only Lagos wealth could buy. Every corner of the Idu Khalifa wedding shimmered with gold and white, from the marble archways lined with lilies to the suspended chandeliers that turned the entire Banana Island mansion into a dreamscape. Guests whispered, champagne glasses clinked, and a live orchestra played beneath a canopy of soft lights. Elara Idu stood at the top of the grand staircase, her heart beating faster than the rhythm of the violins below. Her gown, a masterpiece of satin and lace, hugged her like a second skin. Every camera turned toward her, capturing the picture of a bride who had everything: beauty, grace, and a billionaire husband waiting at the altar. When she met Adrian Khalifa's eyes, her breath caught. He looked devastatingly composed in a tailored black tuxedo, his jaw set, his expression unreadable. To the world, he was the perfect groom heir to Khalifa Holdings, a company that controlled half of Lagos's real estate and shipping contracts. To her, he was the man she'd loved for 2 years, the man who had made her believe in forever. As she walked down the aisle, the whispers followed her like perfume. She's lucky. She's beautiful. She's about to become the next Mrs. Khalifa. Elara smiled softly, but her palms were damp. Something in Adrian's gaze felt off. Cold, calculated. Still, she brushed it away as wedding jitters. When the priest pronounced them husband and wife, Adrian's kiss was polite, not the hungry, adoring kiss she had imagined. Cameras flashed, guests cheered, and champagne flowed, but beneath the applause, something felt wrong. The warmth she expected didn't come. Instead, a quiet chill settled deep in her chest. Later that night, the celebration faded into silence. The guests were gone, the laughter a memory, and only the echo of her heels remained as she walked into the vast master bedroom. Candles flickered on marble surfaces, casting long shadows across the suite. The Lagos skyline glittered through the window, beautiful, distant, and cruelly indifferent. Adrian stood by the glass wall, hands tucked in his pockets, staring out at the lagoon. The man who had held her hand hours ago now looked like a stranger. Elara smiled nervously. "I still can't believe we're married," she said softly, setting her veil on the dresser. "Feels like a dream." He didn't turn. "Does it?" The tone caught her off guard, flat, sharp around the edges. She frowned. "What do you mean?" He turned then, and the sight of his face made her breath hitch. There was no warmth, no tenderness, just a detached, almost cruel calmness. "Elara," he said, his voice low but firm, "you've always been a dreamer. That's why this must feel unreal to you." Her confusion deepened. "Adrian, you're scaring me. What are you talking about?" He took a slow step forward, his polished shoes echoing on the marble floor. "This marriage," he said, his lips twisting slightly, "it isn't what you think it is." Her pulse quickened. "You're joking." He shook his head once. "No, I'm finally being honest." She took a hesitant step toward him. "Honest about what?" He met her eyes, and for the first time that night, she saw it, the darkness beneath his control. "About the fact that this," he gestured between them, "was never about love." Silence fell like shattered glass. Her mouth opened, but no words came. I don't understand." His gaze hardened. "You shouldn't, because none of it was real. Not the flowers you love, not the way I said your name, not even the proposal. Every single thing I did was for one reason: revenge." The words struck her like a physical blow. "Revenge? For what?" Adrian's lips curled into a faint smile, the kind that hurt more than anger. "Ask your father." "Oh, wait, you can't, can you? He's gone, just like my family's name, our company, our peace, all gone because of him." Elara's knees weakened. "You can't be serious." "I am," he said coldly. "Your father destroyed mine years ago. He ruined Khalifa Holdings with fraudulent deals, left my family drowning in debt and disgrace. You're just the final piece of his punishment." She stared at him, tears welling up. So you You pretended to love me." He didn't answer. His silence was answer enough. Her vision blurred. Every word, every touch, every promise was calculated, he finished for her. Every dinner, every smile, every "I love you" was to make sure you trusted me enough to walk down that aisle. The weight of his confession crushed her chest. The world she had built with him, every memory, every dream, collapsed like a house of cards. Her voice cracked. "You hate me that much?" "No," he said softly, almost too softly. "I hate what you represent." The tears spilled over. "Why didn't you just leave me? Why marry me?" He turned away, staring out at the city again. "Because pain is more powerful when it's personal. I wanted you to feel what my family felt: betrayal, humiliation, loss." Elara took a shaky breath, forcing herself not to crumble. Her wedding dress suddenly felt suffocating, the lace like thorns against her skin. "So this is it?" she whispered. "This is your justice?" He met her gaze again, his face devoid of remorse. "Just revenge." The two words echoed in the silence, slicing through her like a blade. Elara's tears burned hot as they fell. She tried to speak but couldn't. The man she thought she knew, the man she gave her heart to, was gone. In his place stood a stranger carved from bitterness. She turned toward the door, her reflection catching in the mirror a bride still adorned in white, but hollowed by truth. She didn't scream, she didn't beg, she simply stood tall, even as her heart bled inside her chest. If he wanted to destroy her, he would have to try harder. Because beneath the heartbreak, a spark flared, quiet, dangerous, and alive. As she left the room, her soft whisper lingered in the air like a vow. "You'll regret this, Adrian Khalifa. I swear you will." And with that, the perfect Lagos wedding ended not with love, but with the birth of something far more powerful: revenge. The days that followed the wedding were a blur of luxury wrapped in silence. Elara Idu woke each morning in a glass palace that gleamed above Eko Atlantic, a penthouse so perfect it could have been carved out of a dream. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the ocean, the waves glinting like diamonds under the Lagos sun. The floors were marble, the air scented with imported lilies, and every corner whispered of money. Yet to Elara, it all felt like a cage, beautiful but suffocating. Adrian Khalifa, her husband, moved through the space like a shadow, controlled, cold, and precise. He left for meetings before sunrise and returned late into the night. When he spoke, it was in clipped sentences that never invited conversation. But when the world watched, when reporters visited or his mother called, his hand would rest lightly on Elara's back, his smile warm and convincing. The perfect husband, the loving billionaire. Elara played along. Every smile she gave for the cameras was practiced, every laugh rehearsed. The media loved them. "Lagos golden couple," the headlines read. Society women envied her diamond ring, her designer wardrobe, her address. None of them knew that the ring felt like a shackle and the wardrobe was armor. On one particularly bright morning, Elara sat before her dressing mirror, a stylist adjusting her curls for a lifestyle magazine shoot. She caught Adrian's reflection in the glass as he entered the room. He looked immaculate as always, a navy suit, cufflinks glinting, a watch worth more than most homes. "Ready?" he asked flatly. She met his eyes through the mirror. "Always." "Good. The photographer's downstairs. Remember—" "Smile," she finished for him, "and pretend I'm the happiest woman alive." A ghost of a smirk flickered on his lips. "You learn quickly." The shoot went perfectly, of course. The photographer gushed over their chemistry, their elegance, their unspoken bond. Adrian's hand grazed her waist as flashes went off, and the world would later swoon over the intimacy in the photos. Only Elara knew that his touch was mechanical, a gesture of dominance, not affection. Later, when the cameras were gone, she peeled off the gown and jewels and sat quietly by the window, watching the sky bleed into sunset. Lagos was alive below, traffic glimmering, distant laughter drifting from rooftop bars. Yet up here the silence was thick. "You should eat." Adrian's voice came from behind her. She didn't turn. Why do you bother pretending to care? He walked closer, his footsteps steady. Because you're my wife, and appearances matter. She let out a dry laugh. Right, the perfect couple. The Khalifa legacy. He didn't reply, just poured himself a drink and stood by the window beside her. The golden light caught the edges of his face, making him look almost human. Tell me something, she said quietly. How long are we going to keep up this circus? He sipped his whiskey. As long as it takes. As long as what takes? For you to pay. Her chest tightened. For my father's sins? He turned his gaze on her, then sharp, cold, unreadable. For everything. Elara forced herself not to flinch. You really think breaking me will bring your family peace? No, he said simply, but it will bring me satisfaction. She stood, her silk robe trailing behind her. Then I hope you enjoy it, Adrian, because that's all you'll ever get from me. His expression didn't change, but something flickered, a flash of something softer, maybe regret, before he masked it again. Days stretched into weeks. Events, galas, interviews. Elara learned to survive by blending perfection with emptiness. She became what he wanted, graceful, obedient, untouchable. But inside she was keeping score. She noticed everything, the way his jaw tensed when he looked at old family photos, how he avoided certain topics, how his anger often turned inward. One night during a charity gala at the Oriental Hotel, Elara found herself alone on the balcony. The lagoon shimmered under moonlight, and the hum of elite conversation floated from inside. She took a deep breath, savoring the moment of quiet. Then she heard his voice behind her. You shouldn't stand out here alone. She turned. Adrian was there, bow tie undone, his expression unreadable. Why? Afraid someone will see the cracks in your perfect marriage? She asked bitterly. He stepped closer. Afraid someone will see how much you still care. She laughed, low and bitter. You overestimate yourself, Adrian. Do I? He reached out, brushing a strand of hair from her face, a touch so gentle it betrayed the venom in his words. You're still here, Elara, still playing the part. Maybe part of you enjoys this. Her heart pounded, anger and confusion twisting inside her. You think I enjoy being humiliated? Being trapped in this glass prison of yours? His gaze darkened. You're not trapped. You could walk away, but you won't. She froze. And lose my dignity? Give you the satisfaction of watching me run? For a moment, they stood in silence, too close, too charged. The night breeze carried the faint scent of his cologne, and her chest ached with memories she wanted to erase. The man before her wasn't the one she'd fallen for, but his voice, his touch, still haunted her. You hate me, she whispered, but you don't even know me anymore. He looked away, his jaw tightening. I know enough. No, she said, stepping closer. You know the version your hatred created. For the first time, he didn't have a reply. His silence lingered like a bruise. That night, when they returned home, she lay in bed staring at the ceiling while he slept beside her. The city lights spilled across his face, and for the briefest second, she saw not a monster, but a man broken by his past, a boy who had lost too much, too soon. She turned away, tears stinging her eyes. Adrian Khalifa might own her name, her public image, even her freedom, but not her soul. Not anymore. From that night onward, Elara learned how to smile while plotting, how to laugh while bleeding, how to become the perfect lie inside his perfect world. He had built her a golden cage, but he had no idea he'd also locked himself inside it. The morning sun filtered through the penthouse windows, soft gold spreading across the marble floor like spilled light. Elara Idu sat at the dining table with untouched breakfast and a hollow gaze fixed on the skyline. Lagos buzzed below, but her world had gone still, perfectly staged, perfectly silent. Adrian had left early for a board meeting, leaving behind his usual note, dinner at 8, wear something appropriate. She folded the note neatly beside her plate, her lips curving in a humorless smile. Even his words were commands, never requests. But the night before, something had shifted. His offhand remark about her father's deceit had sparked a quiet storm inside her. For weeks she had endured humiliation, but now curiosity was stronger than pain. What had her father done to make Adrian despise her so deeply? That afternoon, when the house staff retreated for lunch and the security cameras cycled into maintenance mode, something she'd learned from careful observation. Elara slipped into Adrian's private study. The room was a world of its own. Mahogany shelves, polished desks, walls lined with framed newspaper clippings about Khalifa holdings. But what caught her attention was a thick folder sitting half hidden beneath a crystal paperweight. Her fingers trembled as she opened it. Inside were documents, contracts, audit reports, letters all stamped with Idu Partners, her father's old company. Her breath caught as she read the first line. Confidential, Memorandum of Understanding between Idu Partners and Khalifa Holdings, 2015. Her father and Adrian's father had been business partners. And something had gone terribly wrong. She scanned the next few pages. The story was clear, or at least the one Adrian believed. Years ago, her father, Chief Elara Idu, had allegedly diverted millions meant for a joint real estate project. The betrayal had bankrupted the Khalifas and forced them to sell off assets just to survive. 2 years later, Adrian's mother had died of heart failure. His father never recovered. Elara's heart clenched. Could it be true? Her father, the man who had raised her with gentle discipline and unshakable morals, a thief? A destroyer of families? She found an old photo tucked between the pages, a rare image of her father shaking hands with Adrian's. Both men smiling, standing before a construction site that never came to be. Her father's handwritten note on the back read, "For the future we're building together." Tears blurred her eyes. None of it made sense. Her father had died when she was 20, leaving behind debts but also a legacy of integrity. He was many things: ambitious, secretive, proud, but never dishonest. She closed the file and slipped it back carefully. But the seed of doubt had already taken root. If Adrian's entire revenge was built on this, then maybe the truth had been twisted. That evening, Adrian returned home earlier than usual. He found her by the balcony, her expression distant. "Why are you out here?" he asked, loosening his tie. "Just thinking." He poured himself a drink. Dangerous habit. "Depends on what you're thinking about," she replied. His gaze flicked to her. "And what are you thinking about, Elara?" She met his eyes without flinching. "Your father, and mine." For a second, something flickered in his expression, a flash of surprise, maybe even pain. But it vanished. Don't what? Don't bring them into this," he said sharply. "How can I not? They started it, didn't they?" He slammed his glass on the counter. "Your father started it. Mine paid for it." Her voice softened. "Are you sure about that, Adrian?" His glare hardened. "I lived it." She didn't respond. There was no point arguing, not yet. She simply turned away, hiding the storm building in her chest. Later that night, while Adrian slept, Elara sat at the edge of the bed, scrolling through old news archives on her tablet. She found fragments of articles, whispers of lawsuits, missing funds, a project abandoned before completion. But she also noticed something odd. The timeline didn't match Adrian's story. The supposed embezzlement had occurred after her father withdrew from the partnership months after he'd fallen ill. A name kept recurring in the documents. Victor Obaseki, Adrian's father's financial advisor. Elara frowned. The man's name appeared on every transfer record. Every decision that led to the Khalifas' financial collapse carried his signature. Her instincts screamed that he was the missing piece, the hand that might have turned both families into pawns. By dawn, she had pieced together enough to know one thing. Adrian's revenge wasn't built on truth. It was built on manipulation. Someone had fed him lies, and he'd built his entire hatred, his entire marriage on them. But she couldn't confront him yet, not without proof, not when his rage was still sharper than reason. So she began to plan quietly. When Adrian left for work, she contacted her father's former assistant, Mrs. Okri, an elderly woman who still lived in Lekki. They met in a discreet cafe away from the glare of Banana Island. "Elara," the woman whispered, gripping her hand tightly. "Your father didn't steal from anyone. He discovered the fraud, but before he could expose it, he got sick. He made me promise to keep the records safe." "What records?" "A folder with bank receipts and correspondence between Chief Obaseki and Khalifa Holdings. Your father said it proved who really took the money. Do you still have it?" Mrs. Okari nodded slowly. "Locked away. But if you go after this truth, be careful. People with power don't like their sins remembered." Elara smiled faintly. "Neither do people with guilt." When she returned to the penthouse that night, Adrian was waiting. "You're late," he said, voice cold. "I went for a drive." His eyes narrowed. "Where?" "Does it matter?" she asked lightly. "It does when you carry my name." She smiled sweetly. "Then maybe you should have thought of that before making me your prisoner." The air between them thickened. He stepped closer, studying her face, perhaps sensing the defiance beneath her calm. "You're changing, Elara." "Maybe I'm finally becoming what you wanted," she said softly, "a woman who fights back." He stared at her for a long time before walking away, the echo of his footsteps fading down the hall. When the door closed, Elara exhaled slowly. The old Elara, the one who cried herself to sleep, was gone. In her place stood a woman who had discovered her father's innocence and her husband's ignorance. She wasn't ready to forgive. Not yet. She was ready to expose the truth, and when the time came, Adrian Khalifa would learn that revenge, like love, burns both ways. The rain came down hard that evening, streaking the glass walls of the penthouse in blurred silver lines. The sky above Lagos was bruised with thunder, and lightning flashed over the lagoon like nature's own warning. Inside, Elara Idu moved around the dining room in silence, adjusting wine glasses and silverware under the soft glow of chandeliers. Adrian had insisted on a private dinner. "To talk," he'd said. "Talk," the word echoed like a threat. She'd spent the entire day replaying what she'd uncovered: her father's innocence, Victor Obaseki's deceit, the proof she now held hidden in her vanity drawer. The knowledge burned inside her like a secret flame. She wasn't ready to reveal it yet, not until she understood how deep Adrian's hatred truly ran. At precisely 8, the elevator doors slid open. Adrian stepped out, shedding his suit jacket and setting his phone on the table. His face looked harder than usual, his eyes sharp from a day of battles she could only guess at. "You cooked," he said, noticing the table set for 2. "I did." Her tone was calm, neutral. "You said you wanted dinner." He gave a short nod, taking his seat. The tension between them was almost physical, heavy, unspoken. For a few moments, only the clinking of cutlery filled the air. "Tell me," she said finally, cutting into her steak, "was tonight supposed to be another performance? For the staff, for the cameras, or just for your ego?" His hand froze midair. "You're in a mood." "I'm in a marriage built on lies," she corrected softly. "So forgive me if my appetite doesn't match the menu." Adrian leaned back, his eyes narrowing. "Careful, Elara. You're starting to sound like your father." The jab hit its mark, but she didn't flinch. "You keep saying that. Maybe it's because you need me to be him. Otherwise, who would you punish?" He let out a sharp breath. "Don't twist this." "I'm not twisting anything." She set her fork down and met his gaze. "You married me to avenge something you never even confirmed was true." He stiffened. "You don't know what you're talking about." "Oh, I know more than you think." Her voice dropped, dangerous and steady. "I've seen the files, Adrian. I know about the deal, the supposed fraud, the fall of Khalifa Holdings. But what you call betrayal might have been manipulation, and you've been living someone else's revenge, not your own." His chair scraped back sharply. "You went through my things?" "I went through my life," she shot back. "You destroyed it, remember?" Adrian's jaw tightened. "You think reading a few papers makes you an expert on what happened?" "No," she said, "but it makes me realize you never looked beyond what you were told." The storm outside rumbled louder, as if echoing their fury. He paced to the window, his reflection flickering between lightning flashes. You don't understand what it's like to watch everything crumble because of one man's greed. And you don't understand what it's like to be punished for something you didn't do, she shouted, rising from her chair. You turned your pain into a weapon and aimed it at me. But you're the one bleeding, Adrian. You always have been. He turned sharply, eyes blazing. Stop pretending to know me. Then show me who you are, she whispered. For a moment, the mask cracked. His breathing slowed. His eyes darkened, not with anger, but with something far more dangerous: vulnerability. My father, he said quietly, almost to himself, used to sit right here in this house and talk about loyalty, about trust. Then one day he lost everything. He said the Idus destroyed him. He said your father smiled while doing it. I believed him because I needed someone to blame. Elara's anger faltered. And now? He looked at her, the rainlight glinting in his eyes. Now I don't know what's true anymore. Her voice softened. Then maybe it's time to find out. He laughed bitterly. You think it's that easy? You think truth fixes anything? It doesn't bring back my mother. It doesn't erase the humiliation, pity, the bankruptcy. All it does is remind me that I trusted the wrong people. Like me? She asked. He stared at her, torn between hate and longing. Especially you. The silence that followed was suffocating. Elara's chest rose and fell with the force of words she couldn't say. Adrian's pain was real, she could see it now. But so was her own. They were both victims of ghosts neither had invited into their lives. When she stepped closer, the air shifted. He didn't move. Lightning illuminated them both, two silhouettes trapped between fury and desire. I never asked to be your enemy, she said softly. Then stop acting like one. Stop treating me like a prisoner, and maybe I will. For a heartbeat, the storm outside matched the one in the room, and then without warning, he reached for her wrist. The contact was electric, not cruel, not tender, just charged with something neither could name. Elara, he murmured, his voice rough. You make it impossible to hate you. She met his gaze, unflinching. Good, because soon you'll wish you could. He froze. What do you mean? Nothing, she said, pulling free. Just that you're not the only one who knows how to play games. She turned away before he could respond, walking down the hall as thunder cracked behind her. Her reflection followed her in the mirrored walls, the soft, obedient bride she once was, replaced by a woman carved from resolve. Inside her chest, anger coiled into purpose. Adrian Khalifa had taught her the language of cruelty, but she would speak it fluently now, not out of malice but out of justice. She would make him feel every ounce of betrayal he'd poured into her veins. As she closed the bedroom door, the storm outside reached its peak, and lightning streaked across the sky like a blade. She stared at her reflection one last time, eyes hard, lips steady. If he wanted revenge, she whispered to the woman in the mirror, I'll give him one better. Outside, the city of Lagos glittered beneath the rain, unaware that its golden couple had just declared war. Here, the world saw a new Elara Idu before Adrian Khalifa even realized she had vanished from his control. It began with silence. No goodbye, no confrontation, just an empty penthouse and a letter on his marble counter. Her wedding ring rested atop the note, glinting under the morning light. The words were simple but sharp. You taught me how to fight. Now watch me win. By the time Adrian's anger had settled into shock, Elara had already reclaimed her maiden name and her freedom. She moved into her late father's old estate in Victoria Island, a place she had abandoned in grief. Within days, her lawyers finalized the release of her father's long-frozen inheritance assets, properties, and stocks once tied in litigation. The court's ruling cleared her father's name, unlocking a fortune that had been gathering interest for years. The media went wild. The return of the Idu Empire. At 22, Elara Idu becomes Lagos's youngest billionaire heiress. Social media crowned her the new queen of Lagos. Her face graced business covers. Her story spun as one of grace under fire. But the cameras didn't know the truth that every smile she wore was armor, every calculated appearance part of a greater plan. Elara wasn't just back. She was coming for him. She started small, subtle, invisible moves only a strategist could make. She knew Khalifa Holdings inside out, its board members, its PR playbook, its weaknesses. During her time as Adrian's perfect wife, she had learned everything, the names that mattered, the alliances that held his empire together. Now she would use that knowledge to pull every thread loose. Her first strike was quiet but devastating. Through an anonymous leak, internal memos about a disputed land contract reached the media. The story painted Khalifa Holdings as unethical, and within 48 hours, 2 international investors withdrew. The company's stock dipped. Adrian's face splashed across headlines, his golden reputation beginning to tarnish. He knew it wasn't coincidence. He just didn't know it was her. Elara watched from her Victoria Island penthouse, a room filled with sunlight, white orchids, and calm as the city buzzed with gossip. Dressed in a champagne silk blouse and diamond studs, she looked every inch the billionaire heiress the world adored. But inside, her heart throbbed with a cocktail of satisfaction and ache. "He's learning," she murmured to herself, swirling a glass of rosé. "Pain doesn't knock before entering." By the end of the week, she had launched her own firm, IDU Legacy Group, a powerful conglomerate focused on real estate, PR, and philanthropy. Her rebranding was brilliant. Where Adrian's empire looked ruthless, hers looked compassionate. She sponsored youth scholarships, donated to widows, and appeared at charity events, every move painting her as Lagos's beloved billionaire daughter reborn. Behind closed doors, she orchestrated chaos. She met with former Khalifa board members, those Adrian had alienated during his reign of arrogance. Her charm disarmed them. Her intelligence won them. Within months, half his allies had quietly crossed sides. At the same time, she played the media like a maestro. Subtle narratives began to circulate, whispers that Adrian Khalifa had grown unstable since his marriage collapsed, that he'd lost control of his empire. None of it confirmed, all of it believable. When Adrian finally called her after months of silence, she let the phone ring. Then deliberately, she answered on the last tone. "Elara." His voice came low, taut. "What do you think you're doing?" She smiled faintly. "Living. Why? You're destroying everything I've built." "Correction," she said smoothly. "I'm showing you how fragile your empire always was." "Elara, don't say my name like you own it," she cut in, her tone icy. "You gave up that right the night you called our marriage revenge." Silence. Then his voice softened unexpectedly. "I didn't mean to." She laughed, a sound as sharp as glass. "You did. And I mean this, Adrian. I'm not your victim anymore. I'm your reflection. Remember that." She ended the call and stared out over the lagoon. Lagos glittered below, unaware of the private war being fought above its skyline. Each victory she scored should have felt sweet, the investors who fled, the reporters who turned, the empire that trembled. Yet each night, when the lights dimmed and the noise faded, a different truth gnawed at her. She missed him. His voice, his quiet strength. Even the way he used to stand at the window before dawn, she hated how vividly she remembered it all. For every headline she celebrated, a small part of her mourned, because beneath the layers of revenge, her heart still recognized the man she had loved before the lies. But weakness was a luxury she couldn't afford. At 22, Elara Idu was the richest woman in Lagos, the youngest to own a private investment group, and the most talked about figure in every elite circle. They called her the Queen of the New Lagos. Yet the power she'd gained came with a hollowness she couldn't shake. One evening, during a charity gala at the Eko Convention Center, she arrived in a fitted emerald gown that shimmered under the chandeliers. The room fell silent as she entered, beauty, wealth, and vengeance wrapped in one woman. And across the crowd, she saw him, Adrian Khalifa. He stood alone near the bar, dressed in black, his eyes locked on her with something between pride and devastation. For a moment, the noise of the room faded. Their gazes held his full of regret, hers layered with defiance. She lifted her glass in a quiet toast, her lips curving. "Your move." He nodded once as though accepting the challenge. Later, as she drove home through the glittering streets, Elara's reflection flickered in the window poised, elegant, unshaken. Yet beneath it all, her pulse raced. She had everything now, her inheritance, her empire, her power. And still something in her felt broken, a reminder that revenge, no matter how perfectly executed, never filled the space love once occupied. The city lights of Lagos blurred outside as she whispered to herself, "The crown is heavy, even when it's made of gold." But the Queen of Lagos had no choice. She had started the fire, and now she would see it burn to the end. The night of the Khalifa Holdings annual gala arrived like a coronation, glittering, extravagant, and designed to showcase power. The venue, a glass-domed ballroom overlooking the Atlantic, shimmered with chandeliers and the city's skyline reflected in its walls. The guest list read like Lagos royalty governors, investors, socialites, and media moguls. Every camera was ready to capture the return of the city's most powerful man, Adrian Khalifa. But this year, the spotlight would not belong to him. Elara Idu stood in front of her mirror hours before the event, wearing a gown that spoke the language of vengeance, black silk threaded with gold, elegant but commanding. Her makeup was flawless, her expression unreadable. In her hands was a small flash drive containing documents, video recordings, and financial files, evidence of how the Khalifas had been manipulated and how Adrian had twisted that pain into cruelty. She took a long breath. This was it, the finale. Across town, Adrian adjusted his cufflinks in his suite, unaware of the storm headed his way. He hadn't seen Elara in months, but her presence haunted him. Every deal, every sleepless night, every glass of whiskey poured into silence. His company was bleeding, his investors restless, but he refused to admit defeat. Tonight was supposed to be his redemption. He would reassure the public, charm the board, and rebuild his empire. He had no idea that Elara had turned his redemption into her stage. When she arrived at the gala, heads turned, conversations faltered, cameras flashed, and whispers rippled across the room. The billionaire heiress who had vanished after her divorce from Adrian was back, glowing, untouchable, magnificent. She greeted journalists with calm grace, her diamond earrings catching every shard of light. "Miss Idu," one reporter called, "are you here to support Khalifa Holdings' new chapter?" Elara smiled faintly. "I'm here to witness an ending," she said. Inside, Adrian froze when he saw her. For a moment, time seemed to stop. The crowd blurred, the music faded, and all he could see was the woman he had loved, the woman he had broken, now standing radiant, fearless, and beyond his reach. "Elara," he whispered when she approached, his voice low, strained. "Mr. Khalifa," she replied evenly, offering her hand. "It's been a while." He took it reluctantly, his pulse unsteady. "What are you doing here?" She tilted her head. "Isn't it obvious? I came to see how the empire is holding up." He searched her eyes, but whatever warmth once existed there was gone. She slipped past him toward the stage as the lights dimmed and the master of ceremonies announced the start of the evening. Adrian gave a short speech about resilience and rebirth, about legacy and trust. His voice was smooth, but his eyes kept drifting toward her. Every sentence seemed to falter beneath her steady gaze. Then came the moment she'd planned for months. When he finished, the host announced a surprise segment, a short presentation by Idu Legacy Group, one of the event's new sponsors. Adrian frowned. He hadn't approved any new sponsorships, but before he could intervene, the screens behind him flickered to life. Elara's recorded voice filled the hall. "Every empire has a truth it hides," she began, "and tonight, Lagos deserves to know mine." Gasps rippled through the audience as footage appeared. Documents showing how Victor Obaseki, not Dominic Idu, had orchestrated the fraud that destroyed Khalifa Holdings years ago. Then came emails, signatures, and bank transfers, proof that Adrian's father had been deceived, and that Elara's father had been innocent all along. The audience murmured louder. Adrian stood frozen, color draining from his face. The next slide was worse. Photographs and leaked messages showing Adrian's deliberate manipulation of Elara, his revenge marriage, his staged public appearances, his private words of cruelty. The betrayal played out in real time before hundreds of Lagos's elite. Elara stepped forward, her voice calm through the microphone. "For years I lived as someone else's punishment," she said. "I was shamed, controlled, and silenced, all to satisfy a lie. But tonight, I reclaim my name, my father's honor, and my dignity. Revenge was his game. Justice is mine." Cameras flashed, reporters whispered into recorders, and chaos rippled across the ballroom. Adrian's lawyers and board members looked horrified. Adrian took a step toward her, voice low and desperate. "Elara, stop this!" She turned to face him, her expression unreadable. "Stop what? The truth. You had no mercy when you humiliated me, Adrian. Why should I give you peace now?" He flinched. "Because this isn't you." "No," she said, her voice breaking slightly. "This is me, the woman you built with every wound you gave, the mirror you refused to look into." For the first time, his arrogance collapsed. His voice cracked. "I thought I was saving my family." "You were destroying yourself," she said softly, "and me with you." He looked around at the crowd staring, the cameras rolling, his legacy unraveling. The mask finally fell. "Elara!" His voice trembled. "I was wrong." The words, though late, rang with something real. His composure shattered completely. "You taught me what real pain feels like," he said, his voice shaking through the microphone. "Now I understand what I did to you." The room went silent. Elara's eyes glistened, but her resolve didn't waver. Understanding faced the damage. He nodded slowly. "No, but maybe it starts the healing." She looked at him one last time, the man who had been her dream, her nightmare, and her downfall. "Maybe," she whispered, "but not with me." Then she turned and walked off the stage. The applause that followed wasn't for him. It was for her, the woman who rose from ashes and faced the world unafraid. Outside, the Lagos night air was thick with the scent of rain and salt. Reporters shouted her name, flashbulbs lighting her path, but she barely heard them. The victory she had longed for felt heavy, hollow. In the distance, she saw Adrian through the ballroom glass, surrounded by chaos, his empire crumbling. For the first time, he looked small, human. Elara lifted her chin, her diamond earrings catching the streetlights. She had won, completely. Yet as she climbed into her car and the door closed behind her, tears slipped silently down her cheeks. Love and vengeance both had demanded too much. As the city lights of Eko Atlantic blurred past, she whispered into the quiet, "Revenge always ends in ruins, even when you're the one left standing." And for the first time in years, Elara Idu didn't feel like a victim or a queen. She just felt free. Weeks later, the scandal that shook Lagos's elite had become the city's favorite whisper. "Did you see what Elara Idu did at the Eko Atlantic gala?" became gossip over wine and dinner. Khalifa Holdings fell like a dying star, shares plummeted, investors fled, and Adrian Khalifa disappeared from the public eye. But Elara didn't celebrate. In the mornings, she walked the quiet gardens of her Victoria Island estate, the same place her father used to sit with a newspaper and tea. The lagoon shimmered beyond the glass fence, calm and endless. Sometimes she would close her eyes and remember that night, the lights, the applause, the heartbreak disguised as triumph. She had achieved everything she set out to do. Her father's name was restored, her power unmatched, her face gracing magazines under headlines like "The Woman Who Defied Lagos's Billionaire Patriarchy." Yet inside, she felt like someone standing on the ruins of her own heart. Justice had come, but it had arrived empty. One late afternoon, as the sun dipped gold across the lagoon, a black Range Rover stopped quietly at her gates. Her security hesitated, then approached her with a message. "Ma, it's Mr. Khalifa. He requests 5 minutes." Elara froze. She hadn't seen him since the gala. A part of her wanted to refuse to let him linger in the exile he earned. But another part, the softer, wounded part, still needed closure. "Let him in," she said finally. Moments later, Adrian walked toward her through the garden path. He was different, thinner, quieter, humbled. The man who once ruled Lagos with a cold smile now looked like a soul-stripped bear. "Elara," he said gently, stopping a few feet away. She met his gaze. "You shouldn't be here." "I know," he said, "but I needed to see you, to thank you." "For what?" she asked bitterly. "For freeing me," he said, "from the lies I believed, and from the man I became." She said nothing. The wind stirred between them, carrying the scent of salt and hibiscus. "I lost everything," Adrian continued, "but for the first time I feel peace. Maybe destruction was the only way I'd ever understand." Elara looked at him, really looked, and saw no arrogance left, only honesty. "You did destroy everything," she said quietly, "including what we could have been." He nodded slowly. "I know, and I'll spend the rest of my life knowing it." For a long time they stood there in silence. The world outside their broken history kept turning, waves crashing softly, birds flying home. Adrian finally exhaled. "You once asked me if revenge fixed anything. I have my answer now." "And?" "It doesn't." His smile was faint, sad. "It just teaches you how to grieve differently." Elara's throat tightened. "Then maybe we've both learned enough." He nodded, stepped closer, then stopped himself. His voice trembled as he said, "Goodbye, Elara." She whispered, "Goodbye, Adrian." He left without looking back. As the car disappeared down the long driveway, Elara turned toward the horizon. The sun was setting, painting the water in hues of amber and rose. For the first time, she didn't feel chained to the past. The storm had taken everything: love, innocence, illusion, but it had also left her with truth. And truth, she realized, was the only freedom worth having. She whispered softly into the fading light, "Just revenge? No, it was justice." As night fell over the city, the Queen of Lagos finally laid down her crown and found peace beneath the same sky that once watched her burn.